when he says this goes down, do you think he meant the?
I think he means that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that means we started. So I sent out to Joe and Kelly. Sorry, Marcy, I didn't send this to you because I just sent it. I didn't know who else was attending, so I sent it to Kelly and to Joe. The sheet, this is the same sheet that we went over at the last meeting that we had in council chambers. There were two parts to this. There was the benchmarking that lays out each one of the other communities who we benchmark with on salaries as well. And I've updated the premiums based on the call. I know Kelly was on the call on Wednesday, where Center for Local Government, they voted at the end of the meeting for what the healthcare premium is going to be, the increase is going to be for effective August 1st. And it's going to be 9.9%. So
Right.
It is a big increase. Just a little more background on this, and Kelly, catch me if I miss anything. I think the key thing was that I took away was two things. One is there have been, over the past 7 years, the average annual increase has been 3.8%. So again, this has still been a good way for us to do healthcare in terms of pooling our funds together and pooling our employees together with other communities for this kind of stuff. Again, 3.8% per year for over 7 years. That's an average of 3.8% per year over the 7 years is a really good rate to be able to keep health insurance down at.
Yeah.
And
really good.
they shared with us that there were also 2 years in that period of time when they took an even lower increase than what had been recommended. So there's a reserve amount of dollars that they have to maintain because again, this is a pool of a bunch of communities all going in together. And you have to have a reserve there to maintain just in case there's a large number of occurrences for the healthcare claims. And this 9.9% is after making some other changes to the pharmaceutical plan, and that brings it down. So the net of all that was a 9.9% increase. The other thing, the key thing that was driving this was there was a 70% increase in the number of large claims, and what they define as large claims are claims of over $25,000. So a significant jump on a year-over-year basis in the number of large claims by this pool of communities who are all in this together. So, and to be honest, we did our fair share of that as well. We had our own. Yeah, we did our part in terms of also having some of that stuff occur. So it was a significant increase. Nobody likes it. Everyone would prefer it be a lower amount. Again, we've got the fruits of that benefit over the last 7 years. And again, there was sort of like a double whammy where we now all of a sudden have a much larger claim from last year, which reduced the reserve amounts. We're down below the minimum required. So part of this is getting our reserves back up to the minimum required. And because of the claims last year, they have to use that as sort of a basis for projecting forward. So that's part of the double whammy that goes on there, is because not only did it drain our reserves, but also it has to be used then as a basis for what our reserves need to be for the coming year. So again, 9.9% is the increase that's going to be, and it was voted on and approved by all the members of the Center for Local Government. The numbers that I sent in the updated spreadsheet that I sent to Kelly and to Joe include those new higher rates of 9.9%. And I also updated the second part of that spreadsheet, which shows what the impact would be for the employees. And I sent that to Joni and to Rick Hines as well. So since they both attended the last meeting that we had discussing this.
Hey, Rob, quick question. We're pretty far down the path with Center for Local Government to do are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm watching you on YouTube Live and it's delayed, so you're still talking on YouTube Live. I'm sorry, I got distracted there. We're pretty far down the path about using Center for Local Government this year for medical insurance. If we tried to introduce a different medical insurance facility at this point, we're probably too late to even think about doing that right now.
Correct.
And to even try to price it out.
Right.
Because I think, I know there's been a lot of you've done a ton of work on this thing. I think that Joni's done a ton of work on this thing so far, and I don't think we can probably backtrack and try to bring in another carrier to quote on the program at this point.
Correct. And there's another element to that, Joe. Some years ago, before predating all of us, Joni shared with me that they looked at potentially pulling out of Center for Local Government. And when you do that, you have to buy your way out too, right? Because now all of a sudden you're pulling out, you can't take your reserves with you, your share of the reserves, and you actually have to put some of the reserves, add some more to the reserve. So you do, depending on the overall funding position of the organization at the time. So yeah, to your point.
Yes.
Yep. Can't get out of it right now. Too far down the path. Number two, there could also be a significant bill to be paid to try and pull out of that too.
Okay, and we do have a couple communities in Hamilton County. It looks like they're not part of this program, so we could check with them over the next 12 months to see if it's something we consider next year for the renewal.
Yeah. Terrace Park is one of them. We can check with Terrace Park. So but,
Rob, can I ask a quick question?
sure, go ahead, Marcy.
Does that 9% reflect any anticipation about claims on COVID?
They talked about that. Kelly, help me remember. I mean, I know they talked about the COVID-19 stuff and whether, but they don't. It's based on. It was based on. Was it claims through March or through April? I can't remember. I know it was through the end of March. They picked
March.
the last 4 months of claim data.
Yeah, I believe it was
Include
March.
Some of the stuff that was COVID related, the March stuff. I think it was through the end of March and not through the end of. Well, it wasn't the end of April yet when they had the calls.
Right. But
So
yeah,
it could be even a harder, bigger hit next year.
It could be. Yes.
Or it could be less, Marcy, because as you're well aware, there's a lot of
People not.
non-elective surgeries and the hospitals are half full right now. So there's a lot of medical spending not occurring right now. But, as they turn on, those reduce the restrictions, you could see it from both ends at that point, both COVID and just normal medical plans. So I think, again, it's one of these things, I don't think anybody really knows what the impact's going to be yet.
I just wondered if they were trying to build that into that increase. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
hey,
So-
Marcy, I sent you the email with the,
I saw that come across. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll let you guys get back. I just
Okay.
curious.
So again, we met last time, and coming out of the last meeting that we had, we had Chief Hines and Joni there as well, and a lot of other employees were there. And the agreed plan that everyone thought was a good way to go was to offer 3 different choices. So we've gone from offering just one, the Platinum A, to now offering 3 plans. That's Platinum A, Gold A, and Platinum C. All of them have different levels of deductibles. They're all high deductible plans. That's all that they offer here. And again, what we discussed in the last meeting we had was from the benchmark communities that we compare on salary, we are the only community that does not require employees to contribute to the healthcare premium. Platinum A is what we offer today. The other communities that offer Platinum A have employee contributions ranging from 9.8% to 19.1%.
right.
Where we discussed at the end of last meeting was, we said, we thought it would be fair because we're trying to go in the middle, we're trying to balance some stuff. We're also the lowest in terms of HSA contributions. So we need to boost those up as well. We want to do those concurrently. To be fair, we want to try and be more towards the middle. We're not trying to be at the high end. We're not trying to be at the low end. We're trying to more be in the middle of the pack amongst those other municipalities who are similar size to us. And so what we agreed to was to have the Platinum A as we have this year, but then we're going to have a 10% employee contribution, which is similar to what Fairfax currently does, and similar to Evendale. Evendale has a slightly, Evendale's not an apples to apples basis because they also have a higher deductible, but it's similar to those. We would also increase HSA. Currently we give, 600 and 1,200. We would increase that to 1,000 and 2,000 for Platinum A. For Gold A, we would have an employee contribution. That's a higher deductible plan. The deduction goes from 2,000 for individuals to 2,500. And for employee plus one, it goes from 4,000 deductible up to 5,000 deductible. That's Gold A. And because of the higher deductible, we had a lower, and the higher deductible obviously results in a lower premium rate. And so we also reduced the employee contribution to 7.5% for Gold A. We also have an increase in HSA to that of $1,100 and $2,100 for $1,100 for individuals, $2,100 for employee plus one. Final one, Platinum C. That would be, that is the highest deductible one, is a $5,000 deductible for individuals and $10,000 for employee plus one. We would have a 5% employee contribution on Platinum C. That's similar to what Glendale does. Glendale has two plans. They have a Gold A plan, so we're very similar to us, and a Platinum C plan. Most of these, 5% is what they're offering on their Platinum C, so we're consistent with that. And the HSA contribution will go up to $1,500 for the individual and $3,000 for employee plus one. So again, that was what we came out of the last meeting. Chief Hines and Joni were agreeing that they thought that would be the best way to bring this forward is to also include those other choices for the employees, so they have other options to pick from instead of Platinum A, because Platinum A is, as its words, it is the top. It's got the highest level of coverage for all these things. So that's why we're also including the highest employee contribution rate for that one.
Hey, Rob,
Yes.
just to clarify something, in order to do that 7.5% on the Gold A, we had to offer 3 plans, correct?
No, we could have done a different rate. We could have done some other rate if we wanted to.
Well, there was some parameter on us being able to offer the 7.5 versus, I don't know, another 10. Am I interpreting that wrong?
No, I think you can offer, because if you look at the Indian Hill offers Gold A and Platinum C, and they're the same employee contribution rates
Okay,
in that spreadsheet. So I don't think we're limited. I think we were just sort of saying each one of those is sort of a step change, right? So you have
Okay.
the Platinum A, the lowest deductible, Gold A is the next lowest deductible, and then Platinum C. So we just thought, we would move those employee contribution percents in line with those reductions in the or the increases, I should say, increases in deductibles.
right. Okay, thanks.
So coming out of the call, my opinion is I think that's still the right scenario that we should go forward with. I don't think there's anything, again, quite honestly, for me, with a 9.9% increase, if we did nothing, if we left things the way they are today with no employee contributions and the lower HSA contribution rates, the village's cost would go up by over $27,000. So, and we all know we're facing some challenging times right now because of COVID-19. And we also had some other challenges even before coming into this. So I think that, to me, is just all the more reason why we need to implement this on this timing. As we talked in that meeting, employee contributions will be pre-tax, so that will help to reduce the taxable income for the employees. And the other thing that came to me was, this year is also the year that we've implemented a bonus structure that is variable, but it's also got, instead of just fixed at 250, we've also increased the bonuses that they can earn. Now it's variable, it's based on performance, whereas before it was no performance based. But the top end has gone from 250 to 850. And so I think, again, from a total employee salary and benefit standpoint, I think it makes sense to go ahead and do this now on this timing, because it's concurrent with some of those other changes we've made as well. So I've been doing a lot of talking. Kelly and Joe, do you guys have anything to add or any thoughts, on what we should be proposing to council?
Well, I'm going to say this, as far as, because it is a total compensation package, not just a, salary package. So I think that no matter what we do, it's important to drive that point home, with the employees. I honestly don't think, based on the conversations I've had, it's going to come as a huge surprise that some of this cost has to be absorbed by employees, unfortunately. I think what we're presenting here is the least evil.
No, I think based on the benchmark data, one could argue to push some of these things even higher based on the other communities and what they're having employees cover.
Yeah.
All right, a couple thoughts on my head. Number one, most employers from the corporate level instituted these types of programs many years ago. I want to say 10 to 15 years ago, at least. The whole concept is that what you're trying to do is encourage the employees to be, smart consumers as much as possible of medical services. And one of the ways to do that is, number one, having them understand the cost of these services by having them paying a portion of the medical insurance. The other way is through the HSAs and through the deductibles of, in essence, they're going to be spending their own money first or available dollars. And so we're actually encouraging more of that by increasing the HSAs. But again, this is a pretty traditional method that you see in the corporate world. And I think, Rob, one thing you didn't have on your status, just how many years some of these other municipal organizations have been doing this. I did hear from the school district, they probably instituted this 12 years ago.
Mhm.
And I think they're at a 15% level as far as premium contributions. So this is not a odd ask of the employees to contribute, some percentage of the premium costs for these medical insurance. And unfortunately, the increase we're seeing from CLG right now is not odd across the board. I mean, other people are seeing similar types of medical increases. For it, just the cost of the medical services just keep continuing to increase.
Agree. Okay, is there any other discussion we want to have concerning the plans before we go ahead and vote on what to propose to council for the upcoming council meeting? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So
Heard anything?
no, so I would move that we vote to go with the proposed plan that we have of Platinum A, Gold A, Platinum C with the contributions and HSA levels that I discussed earlier. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of going forward with that as a recommendation to council, please say aye.
Aye.
Try to get my thumb. Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thumbs up.
Okay, so I will write up a report, and Kelly, you bring up a good point. I'll try to make sure I incorporate into that talking about it in terms of total compensation too. So it is the total package, not just one thing.
Right. Yeah. Not
Yep.
sugarcoat it, but certainly make it a easier, better pill to swallow.
Okay, so looks like we are done with that topic. I will move this stuff aside. So the second topic that we had on the agenda, then, within the Finance Committee, we've been asked to look at, are there ways that we've got a parking situation over, especially in the older district of the village, in terms of there's a lot of cars that do not have off-street parking available. Not a lot of cars that have to park on the street, because there's not a lot of off-street parking available. Finance Committee's been asked to look at, are there ways that we can create incentives for property owners or property owners, I guess is probably the best way to say it, is because it could be part of townhouse, or it could be part of apartments over there, stuff like that. So incent property owners to build or create more off-street parking to alleviate some of the on-street parking challenges that they're facing over there. I sent to you, I found two other places that are currently doing this: Dayton, Kentucky, and Bellevue, Kentucky.
Yep. And
so I sent those to you as well. I hope you had a chance to read through some of that stuff.
Yep.
And then I also took a first cut at what I think are some of the decisions we need to make around this. And so that's where I'd like to go next, is actually to start talking through that sheet that I sent to you about what decisions we need to make around incentives for this off-street parking on private property. So the first question is, again, what part of Mariemont should be included? Now, and Kelly, I know you've got this in Public Works actually too. You've had some discussion in Public Works about
Right.
The parking, and I know that's one of the topics you're working on as well.
Yeah. I mean, the landlord thing is a big part of it.
Yep.
Actually, our landlord at the office is also a pretty big property owner in the historic district.
Oh, okay.
And I was gonna give him a call and just kind of get a feel for his thoughts. I mean, I guess what I wonder is when we look at the properties, how realistic is it that they could add parking? I mean, you look at the houses on Cello, the houses on Homewood, where they could actually put additional off-street parking.
I should have sent to you. So I got a photo of something. I don't know if you know Chad Osgood.
Yeah.
He owns some of the properties over there. So he actually he took some of the backyard and he put parking into there, and it's not a garage, and it's done really well. It's done really nicely. And so it's got some paver stones.
Okay.
Grass can grow up in amongst it as well. And so,
Right.
but it creates a parking spot right at his properties. So the tenants can pull right in and, go straight into their, right into their townhouse there. And so I've got a photo of it, so I'll forward it to you guys.
Okay. Do you know the address, the street off the top of your head?
Not
'Cause I'll just run down it.
Yeah, no, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's in one of the alleys in the back,
Okay. One of the alleys.
So,
Hey, Rob, two
Yeah.
things.
Kelly,
Number
it's behind
Go-
Maple Street.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Two things, Rob. One, I would talk to Chad. There's another parking space that's been put on a little bit further down that alley. It's probably not as aesthetically pleasing as Chad's, but I probably would talk to both of them and find out how much it costs them to do that.
right.
And then, it might help us understand the dynamics of how much we may want to try to incent them to, what it would take to get a little bit of incentive to, help offset the costs. The other question I had, you mentioned both Bellevue and Dayton has had this program.
Mhm.
Were you able to talk to anybody over there to see just how many people took advantage of this thing?
No, I used their contact. I did the on their website, and one of them contacted me back. The one from Bellevue, I believe it was, who contacted me back. So I have somebody who I can reach out to now, so I can find out how many people participated.
Yeah, because I think that would be good. I think the Bellevue program talked about some grant amounts, for different types of construction. And the question is that enough to get people to do stuff, or is it too little? And that I think that's the the question in my mind about what is it going to take to really get people to do some of these things. And then the question is how much do we have to set aside every year to try to make that happen?
And that's a key part of it as far as where we are, budget wise, is figuring out where it comes from and how much.
Yep.
All right. So again, I don't know if it's going to be possible to get a hold of those data points, but I would like to see that before we start tackling some of the questions that you had on your sheet. I do appreciate all the work you've done so far, because I think it's teeing this issue up well. I do believe there are some residents who have talked about some of the things we've done in the past, like putting parking pads in the Murray median was probably not legal. There were some concerns about that. So I think doing this actually solves that parking issue in probably a way that we don't have to worry about a legal challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and on that note, should we be able to have this program and get private off-street parking I know right now the way the path has been redesigned would be parallel spots. But I'm
Yes.
still hearing from people like, no, they shouldn't be there at all. So, and that question will come up, if they're like, okay, if you're going to do this, do those spots go away?
Yeah, I think the legal concept that people kept bringing up was you're taking public property and benefiting private owners, whether
Yep.
landlords. And so there was a real question whether that was actually legal. And I'm not, a lawyer, but I have to listen to people who have, legal backgrounds that bring that issue forward. So if we're going to solve this parking issue within the historic district, I think this mechanism is probably the way to do it.
Yeah, I think we need to offer something like this. I think this is a way to incent. So let's, we don't have to answer the questions now, but I'd like to read through these questions and then ask you guys if there's any other questions I should add to this list, you
Mhm.
know?
Okay, yeah,
So again, I think the questions we need to answer are, what part of Mariemont should be included in this incentive? It's not, clearly it's not everywhere. It's places where we have issues with people being able to find parking. I mean, we heard that clearly in the old district that's over there, where people have trouble finding spots sometimes. So, second question, I think there's also, in my mind at least, I don't know that we would have to cover 100% of the cost. To me, I would like to see some skin in the game for some of the other people, for the property owners as well. So I wrote here,
well,
what.
because it benefits them,
Mhm.
I mean, they have better parking, they can raise the rent.
Right.
So it's a win-win for them.
So I just, I think that's a question we should ask ourselves is what percent of the cost should we cover? Third question is there a maximum amount we will pay per project? And then also for the whole year, because again, that appears to be what both Dayton and Bellevue have done is they've set caps, which makes sense to me. You got to have a cap on this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Not just on a cap on a per project basis, but there's also a cap for the year. It's not like, to your point, Kelly, earlier, it's not like we have deep pockets so we can just keep doing this all the time. We're going to have, it's going to meter it out over years. To do.
right.
Fourth question, are there any time boundaries you'd want to give in terms of implementing in the sense of if somebody comes to us, I don't know if you reading through the Dayton and Bellevue process, they've
Mhm.
laid out a whole process where the individual has to come to the community, the village, municipality, whatever, present what they're going to have. There has to be a front end discussion, a review and approval before there's a commitment for any grant money. And then once there is an agreement that says, yes, we will provide some funding, in my mind too, well, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but so is there a time boundary? Do we say, okay, now once you've been approved to go do this, I would think they have some kind of time boundary. You got to implement it within whatever, one of these showed 90 days. And if you don't do it within 90 days, you can come back and ask for another 90 days. And if you don't have it after another 90 days, which is half a year, 180 days, roughly half a year, then you got to go ahead and go through the process again. So that's just another question in terms of time to implement once it's been approved by the municipality. What kind of structures are we willing to pay for? And I think that'll link in also to say if there's a cap in terms of how much we'll pay per project, that'll tie into that. What will be the approval process? So, obviously, again, I think it makes sense to get approval prior to the start of construction. You want to make sure
Right.
there's alignment then. And then obviously, if there's any parts of the historic district, it's going to have to get approval from the ARB as well.
Right.
We can do anything.
So, take into account, they'd have to have a building permit.
Mhm.
So where in the process do we put that? We make that, okay, we'll give you this. I think we cap it rather than a percentage.
But you can do both. No, well, here's what I
Or you
would do.
can do either or.
No, you do both. You say, here's how I would do it. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping this because I've just been spending a lot of time thinking about this. So I would say, hey, the village could cover 50% up to a maximum of $750, $1,000, whatever. So you say percent up to a max of.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Rob, can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Marcy.
So as part of this, Joe mentioned that there was, the one that the Osgoods did, and then there was one that was not as attractive.
Mhm.
At least for the historic district, could we set some aesthetic standards as well to be eligible?
Yeah, I would think we could do that.
I think you can set the aesthetic standards as part of the grant program, but the zoning codes and the building codes are going to control what actually somebody can put down.
Right.
So
But I'm
the
just
question
saying-
would be, would we, contribute to incentivize them to put something in we don't like?
Well, and that's one of the, I agree with you. And so that's one of the things that these things are also clear. The documents that come from Dayton and Bellevue is like, even if it meets the code, the village can still say no. Right? You're not, it's not like, oh, you check the box and you just get the money. It's like, no, there isn't a chance for the village to say no if there's some reason, like you're saying, Joe and Marcy, that we don't think it's aesthetically appropriate. So again, that's why part of the process would be they would need to show us plans and how they expect it to look and all that kind of stuff.
And
Will
it-
either of those communities have significant historical districts or?
Bellevue does.
Okay.
Bellevue does. And so it's actually part of their process is it has to be reviewed. There's a historic preservation officer. Yeah, there's a city historic preservation officer. And so the part of the review process that it has to go through that person, again, in my mind, that's sort of what the ARB is supposed to be for us. And so I would think that if there's anything that's done in historic district, it has to go through the ARB as well before the village
Right.
can sign off on that.
Yeah, it says any work proposed for the exterior of any structure located within one of the city's historic districts shall be reviewed by the city's historic preservation officer to assure the intended work complies. Da 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 da.
I just have one other quick question based on my experience, my limited experience on the ARB, but how do you regulate? What we've had a problem with is people going ahead and doing something
Mhm.
and then kind of like, well, sorry, this is what we did. It's already a done deal. Do we say then, sorry, you don't get the money?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. To me, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a grant process. This, again, what Dayton and Bellevue have done is like, you got to go through this whole process in the front end before you build anything. And the village has to then say, yes, we agree before any construction can start. Otherwise, no, the village doesn't have to pay anything.
Yeah, it's not retroactive.
Well, I'm just saying based on my experience that people just go ahead and
Oh,
do
yeah.
things in the historic district and, it's a lot harder decision to say you got to rip this out. But I hear what you're saying. It's a little bit different because it's about granting money as opposed to just doing something. So, all right.
Right.
I'm sorry. I don't want to take up too much time. So I'll mute
No,
myself.
Good question.
Marcy, my view is that you will have a better chance to control it if you're contributing part of the money.
That's
So we can
good point.
develop standards, and you don't get the money unless you follow the standards.
That's a
Right.
really, really good point.
Right.
Thank you.
And that feeds into the last question. I mean, I would view this as a reimbursement too.
Yes,
When I read
agreed,
through Dayton
agreed.
and Bellevue, at least Dayton sounded like there's a front end. They just go ahead and grant them the money. And to me, it's like, no, it needs to be on the back end after the work's been done and we review it and we say, yes, you did build what you said you
Yes.
build and all that other kind of stuff. And then we'll cut you a check that says we'll reimburse you whatever percent we say or whatever we agreed to on the front end.
Agreed completely. Yep.
And it would also, in my mind, it was also, I'd want to be able to see all the receipts to say, okay, did you really spend what you thought you were going to spend? I mean, if you sent, that's why Kelly, I was sort of saying to make a commitment to say 50% up to a max of, because then if they spent less than they thought, which is great, then we would just pay 50% of that lower amount.
Right.
So are there any other questions or framework that we want to make around this that we should include into this?
One other thing that's kind of rattling around my head here. We got a fair number of garages in the historic districts that are being rented out to non-residents.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're being rented out to people who have classic cars and all the rest of the stuff. And God bless the landlords. They're, it's American capitalism and they're, getting extra money. But my question is, if we were to incentivize people to, and a lot of those garages are in pretty rough shape at this point.
Yeah.
So is this program going to try to incentivize people to potentially redo or renovate that garage space? And if we participate in this process, should we put a restriction in that you can't rent that space out to a non-resident of the living structure that it's, attached to or next to? Just something to think about.
Yeah, so there's actually something, there's something in the code book that says there's a date, I can't remember, it was in the 1990s. And it said a hard date that said, if you build any garages or parking structures after that, it has to be for the residents who live there. So new construction has to be for the people. So you can't build garages going forward for anybody who's not living in the facility.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. Does that rule then preclude or prevent an owner from actually updating the structure? And is that maybe contributing to the dilapidation on a lot of those structures we're seeing?
I don't know the answer to that question, Joe. I don't know if it, again, what I recall reading was it was setting grandfathered. So it essentially grandfathered people in who had already built garages prior to the date.
Right. But I would like to think about if we can do something of that to incentivize some change back there, because a lot of those structures just keep getting worse as the years go on.
So, but help me. So I just want to play it out then. So what if they already are, it's being already rented to somebody who is in the structure. So then they don't get a grant?
I think if we can somehow restrict future activities, so that garage space doesn't turn over to being rented to somebody who's not living in the area. Because I think that whole process has contributed to this parking problem that we have.
So you're saying, okay, so if there's a garage that's being rented out to a non-resident and the property owner wants to make a significant improvement to that garage, can we put the parameter on it that now has to be rented to has to be to a resident of that same building, or it can continue to be rented out to the non-resident?
I would prefer not renting it.
But not get the grant.
I would prefer we incentivize people to provide parking spaces for the residents first, because part of the problem we have over there is that these garages are being rented out to non-residents, and it exacerbates the problem. I mean, the first problem we have with the historic district, it was built where, you know, people barely had one car,
Right.
versus in a lot of instances you got two now.
Yeah.
And so we have to figure out how to take the original master plan to adopt it to modern realities.
Yeah.
And the only way we can do that is potentially trying to incentivize the property owners to adopt changes that will solve that problem for us. We don't have any room to put more parking spaces in.
No, I don't agree with you, Joe. So, because again, the Chad Osgood thing, you can take a lot of those townhouses, you can take in the back area and you can create a parking pad there. So the thing that I agree with you that it would be great to be able to sit there and improve the quality of the garages there. I'm trying to follow this through to say, so how do you enforce that? Is somebody go follow, how are you going to follow up? Like, okay, they rent it for a year to the resident and then the resident moves someplace else. And now somebody else comes in and the owner goes and rents it to somebody who's not a resident. How do we track that down? How do we know?
There's a couple things you can do. You can build it into, you know, you do an agreement with the current property owner, and then that agreement has to stay in place with subsequent property owners.
But how do you enforce? How do you enforce it? That's my question. How do you actually enforce it? How do you go on an annual?
I would rather have the ability to enforce it than not have the ability to enforce it. So are we going to catch them on the first day that they rent it out to somebody else? No, but sooner or later you're going to figure it out. You know, we're not going to have somebody over there watching every car going in and or out. But right now we don't have the mechanism to enforce or encourage the property owners to not rent those things to non-residents.
I don't disagree with that. I guess in an environment where we're tighter on funds, I would rather create new spots.
Okay.
Than enhance the quality of existing spots. I mean,
I'm not going to let perfect get in the way of good here, but just a thought. You know,
no, I think it's a good thought. And maybe it's one of these things where we do this, take the first step and see how it goes.
Right. See how it works out.
And then maybe go after the second step. So, you know, step by step on this thing.
Right.
Because I agree with you. I'd love to see those garages used for the residents over there. And what's the mechanism? This could be a mechanism to go do that. I don't know. The thing that has me concerned is what's the enforcement? How do we go find out if it's actually being used for what it's supposed to be used for? You know? Okay. So I've added that as a question, Joe. So I've added number 8 on that list of decisions. So, what I wrote down was if work is done on a garage and receives a grant, And it has to provide spot to the residents there. So I've written that down. So I'll add that to the list.
So when a resident, so if a resident leaves a rental property, does Deanna find out anything from that, or is that just the property owner information?
No,
Like I know,
Deanna has to be notified. So it's actually up to, my understanding is, it's actually up to the resident owner. The owner of that residency is supposed to notify Deanna when somebody else comes in and starts renting the empty place out.
yeah. Wonder what the success rate is of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know. Okay. So again, I've captured the questions. Let me see the follow-ups I've also captured here. Talking to Chad, and also whoever owns that spot further down the seat, I'll send an email to you of the picture of that parking that Chad did put in the back of his, the townhouse he owns. And then Joe recommended I will follow up with Bellevue to find out how many people have participated. And I'm just gonna ask him, is there anything they would change, in hindsight? So any learnings, stuff like that they might have.
Do we know when they implemented this?
No, I do not. I don't think
I was
there's.
looking to see if there was any dates
No.
on there.
So, but again, at least.
Oh, wait, it is. It says available for the program beginning July 1st, 2009. So they've had it for a while.
So that's Bellevue then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, almost 11 years.
Yep. And like I said, they're the ones who also have a historic district. So I think they would be even more important. And Dayton, when I did it, I did their thing on their website, says contact us, and I did. And I got an auto reply that they'll get back to me, but I have not heard anything from them. Whereas again, somebody from Belleville actually did contact Bellevue. I keep saying Belleville. Bellevue contacted me, and so I have a name to reach out to. So I will do that to find out.
One thought, thinking further down the road about funding it, actually funding it. At least for the historic district, we may be able to get MPF to kick in, a couple $1,000 every year or something. Or even the entire Emory Foundation.
Okay.
That's cool. Great.
Provided, we have a certain aesthetic.
Right.
So I wanted to put that out there before I forgot. And, that's something that Bill and I can work on.
Thanks, Marcy.
Okay. I'll write that down. They'll capture that.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other thoughts or suggestions from anybody? Other things we need to be thinking about? Joe's already moved on to the next topic.
Yeah, Joe's gone. We've lost him.
I got a couple of emails I'm trying to reply to here, so I'm sorry.
That's right.
I'm listening now.
No, I think we're done. Those are the two topics we had on the agenda for today's meeting, and we've addressed both of them. I will take a first cut at the committee report, and I will send it to Kelly and Joe, since, no offense, Marcy, but I always send it to the committee members so they can go ahead and read through it and give me any comments or suggestions they have. So
that's entirely fine with me, and it doesn't bother me at all. I just like, especially with regard to finance and where we are, I like to sit in on the meetings when possible to stay on top of things. That's all.
sure.
I
No,
think
and I
that's
appreciate
great.
your inputs too. Getting your inputs today was helpful as well. So, so Kelly and Joe, I'll send you copies of the committee report so you have a chance to provide input before I submit it by Thursday, close of business Thursday, to Joni, so it can be in the packet for the coming meeting. And I think I told you guys that I talked to Ed, and the plan is at the first meeting in May, to submit both the committee report and the ordinance. And because we want to go through the regular 3 readings, the problem is open enrollment for the new healthcare plan starts June 8th. So if we have the first reading in the first meeting in May, the second reading in the second meeting in May, the third reading and the final vote in the first meeting in June, which is June 8th, then we'll just everything will line up right on time for this stuff. And so So we're going to have those both, and that'll allow us, if there's any comments or changes that council wants to make at the meeting, the first meeting in May, we can incorporate those into the ordinance at the second reading in the second meeting in May. So again, we're going to submit both the ordinance and the committee report in the first meeting in May. Okay.
Okey doke.
Okay, well, I have no other topics, so I guess we will call this a meeting.
Call it a day.
Thank you. Josh,
All
you wanna
right.
go ahead and sign us off.